We are like teachers in a playground of children who do not want to know what the school exists. Why is it our duty to teach them? I will tell you. When children or childish people are left to themselves, the strongest overcome the rest and treat them unkindly. That's for page 131, no, 139 of Four Things by Alasdair Gray. And I'm reading this for my interview with the Vampire Inspired Readathon, where I snoop onto the shelves of our beloved characters. All prompts are created based on like the character arcs for season 1 and season 2 of AMC's Interview the Vampire. And books are chosen right after I create all the prompts and everything like that. So you could either read along with me or pick up books from your own shelf to read. All right, and so this one is fulfilling prompt. Claudia's fighting for her independence, so pick a book that discusses like gender dynamics. And this book was published in 1992. This is Gothic literature, but it also feels more like science fiction. It's like 317 pages. And also, this book can easily fulfill another prompt, which is to read a story within the story because of the way that the structure of the book goes. I'm going to go ahead and just refresh all our memories and read a synopsis about this book. So, also, when I read this book, I started to snoop around about other people's thoughts. And apparently, this is like the most tame of the author's books. He's also written McRoddy and Ludmilla, Why Scots Should Rule Scotland, and also something Leather, among other books. So this is Poor Things. It's a postmodern revision of Frankenstein that replaces a traditional monster with Bella Baxter, a beautiful young erotomaniac brought back to life with the brain of an infant. Godwin Baxter's scientific ambition to create the perfect companion is realized when he finds the drowned body of Bella, but his dream is thwarted by Dr. McCandless's jealous love for Baxter's creation. And so when we're reading this book, we're actually being told the story by Dr. McCandless. There's a journal that was found. And so the way that the author actually writes this is that he's treating this journal like it's a work of nonfiction. And the only time that he is going to insert himself has to do with like footnotes and whatnot. And so what we learn from here is that a majority of the book, we are not getting Bella's point of view, her version of the story, until like much later, she kind of peeps out in a way through a letter, and we have some understanding that the story is not really including her thoughts and feelings and her perspective of what happened in her own life. And so, since it's Gothic literature, just like the whole idea of this mad scientist putting the brain of a baby into a woman, it's just it's a lot that's wrong with them with this that's going on. But I did really love the book. It's a discussion about women's autonomy, identity, the nature of humanity, the subjectivity of truth, which I thought was so great. I didn't like know to expect that, and that really falls in the line with the television show AMC's Interview the Vampire. This is also like a critique on Victorian society and gender roles. And so, although I try to pick books to like the best of my ability in terms of like fulfilling my prompt, it doesn't always work out. As you know, I've like definitely DNF'd some books. There's also a discussion about like scientific progress, about politics. And so, yeah, I just really enjoyed it. But what I will say is, yes, we come across this woman and that she's very uninhibited and wants to have their own like sexual experiences. And I feel like that's a commentary on like the double standards in a way of what a woman can do and what or what a woman can't do and what a man can. And so I really appreciated that, although this is a critique of Victorian times, this definitely lands today. I'm trying to think about what else stuck out to me. And so it was interesting to get all these like different male points of view about what's going on with Bella. And there's different men that come into her life as well as women. And that's another part of the book that is explored. It's not just about her being uninhibited, but also I don't know, letting go of all the how should I say, the rule book or the bounds of like sexuality. So I and also exploring like how a woman makes money. Um, there's discussion about prostitution. So I liked all of that. But before I continue, just know that the next little bit I'm going to discuss is a bit of a spoiler. So let me go ahead and put this up. If you haven't read this, basically you don't want to hear this part. But there is so much more to discuss with this book because of what we learn probably like the last third of the book that really I felt elevated all the material. I did like all of it and all the deep discussions that was going on, but it's so there's like another layer to this story. So spoilers bound. All right. So what we learn is after all this that Bella has been through, is that they have another name, I believe Victoria. And so she's about to marry someone. I can't remember. I think it was Mr. McCandless. She's about to marry Mr. McCandless after all this time. And some gentlemen try to stop the wedding because it turns out Bella Baxter is actually Victoria something or other. And the person that's trying to stop the wedding is her husband and like one of his like family members. And so there's another reveal because now the doctor that made her who she is, like this monstrous character brought back to life, actually, they didn't put a baby's brain into this body. Also, by the way, I forgot to say this. Look up the trigger warnings for this book before we continue. Bella was basically running away from an abusive domestic experience and decided that it's best to throw myself into the river than go back to that relationship. And it is interesting because even within that discussion, we do see the double standards of this man that she's married to gets to like be a philanderer, and then how a woman is considered if she has a sexual appetite. So that was like an interesting conversation. But there's this other layer of Bella Baxter being lied to because she didn't even remember her past. And the person that created her, actually, Godwin, that's his name, Godwin, knew the whole time. So there's that layer to it. And then there's this whole discussion of men trying to decide what's going to happen to this woman. So again, it's a woman not having agency. And Godwin, along with Mr. McCandless, will like stand up for her. And they're like, we're not going to have this discussion. Like, she has to be included at a time when that would be like unheard of. And so there's this constant discussion about like woman's autonomy, um, agency over oneself. So I really like that. What I appreciate about the twists is this whole time we've been like, I get horrified because to me, I thought it was like a child's brain. But then we realize like, oh no, this person, you might not remember her past, but she's been herself this whole time. Basically, is like what really stuck out to me. So I'll stop with the spoilers there. But I did like the twist. I feel like it adds a layer to everything else that had went on prior to finding that out. But also the story stands so well on its own without the twist. I just think the twist made it even better. What this story is really about is quite powerful. now, as spoiler chat ends, what we do is at some point we do get a letter from Bella, and she does have us peek through and see like her point of view and what she really thought about the men in her life. And on top of that, we just see how passionate she is about um, political, medical, like mental health activism. She's just someone that wants to be like an active citizen to make like change happen. And she definitely feels like a character that feels like I have to try to do things because I don't want time to slip by and not do something. And I thought that was really interesting because she does say something about Mr. McCandless about like how he does have money, but he he conflates idleness with freedom. And I thought that was like a very like interesting discussion in itself, and also really lets you know a lot about Bella in terms of like who she is and through like perceiving someone else in that way. And so I thought that was really interesting. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about this book before continuing. Hey everyone, editing Leslie is here. All right, so I missed an important point I meant to bring up. I used a specific quote at the beginning of discussing this book, and I totally forgot to have a conversation about the quote. Sometimes I won't. I try to pick a quote that's like maybe encapsulates or what the author wants us to like chew on. This one was a little bit different, but it still stuck out to me. And I meant to elaborate and I completely forgot. So here it goes. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this quote. It's from page 139. And it's this missionary saying, "We are like teachers in a playground of children who do not want to know that the school exists. Why it is our duty to teach them, I will tell you. When children or childish people are left to themselves, the strongest overcome the rest and treat them unkindly." And to me, this is like one of those a framing of something that's so incredibly dangerous and consistently perpetuated. And I feel like it mirrors in some ways how Bella Baxter is treated, right? We're experiencing this narrative of a woman's story through these male point of views. And also she has apparently, allegedly has the brain of a child in her body. And then you have to think about like what other people think about her, the men, even though they have this knowledge, right? And what I'm getting at is that she herself is infantilized. And this is a sentiment that this missionary is carrying on, right? They're saying, oh, there's this other group of people. And instead of like accepting other people's like, how should I say this, cultural upbringing or differences. And so instead of doing that, they would rather infantilize others and make them seem as if people are in a position to need help when like they're not asking for it. And I thought that was really important because I felt like that tapped into to like the colonial construct of like and also like white saviorism. So like mixed in this is just like it's really racist as well. And so that's something else I wanted to bring up in terms of like also trigger warnings is some of these wild points of view. But I think that's what's so interesting is that there's this woman that had to escape her circumstances in the only way that she could. To like freedom was only like could only be acquired in death. And I thought that was like so interesting. And she's hearing these people that are alive carry these sentiments that are, I don't know, all the way wrong. Everyone else is a problem. And I think that really taps into, like, let's say, for instance, like Frankenstein. And the whole idea of that book is that, well, the monster isn't really the monster, right? And in this book, I feel like the book is tapping into, like, you could say patriarchy, but there's other like colonial systems at play that are really the monster, and we're seeing like all the facets that Bella Baxter comes across, and I thought that was really important. And then also really taps into, like, let's say something that Louis says in Into the Vampire, but could also be maybe true for Claudia. You know, she doesn't. We don't really get to hear too much of her point of view, which is that he didn't come alive until death. And for Bella, she didn't gain a particular level of freedom until she died. And that is something that's also coincidentally explored in a book. Oh my gosh, I just read it with Quana from her Row Reviews, George Washington Black. That's also something that's a theme throughout. Is that like, right away at the beginning of the book, that it's part of like certain cultures um, to be free in death. And then you have all these different characters in some way escaping from their circumstances through death. And so, anyways, I just went off on this whole tangent based on this one quote alone. Again, it all circles back to infantilizing, and I feel like that's a way to like remove power from someone, because what they're doing actually is removing their agency and disguising it as help, and that's just BS. But I felt like that specifically really stuck out to me. There's something that's just a particular kind of brand of evil that uses like kindness um, and helping thy neighbor in order to strip others of like their freedom. And that just felt like a very specific example of like someone going in and colonizing just to implement their own practices and political views and religious views and maybe like, let's say for instance, Western views on others when people are already doing their own thing. Anyways, that's just stuck out to me, and I thought that was really powerful. If you kind of look at that and like expand it upon like what Bella Baxter is going through. Anyways, that's a long editing note. I will let the other Leslie continue. It's definitely worth picking up. But I'm gonna leave that there. And I'll just say that I definitely want to read other books by the author. But we're going to move on to my 3 questions for the readathon. Why does this character have this book on their shelf? I feel like the story is a little bit like of a reverse of what it like parallels in some ways like what Claudia went through. Someone she didn't know took her and like non-consensually turned her into a vampire. And with this character, I like via the synopsis, what we know at the beginning is that this body was taken and a baby's brain was put into the body. And I think both of those are like conversations because of the narrative that exists about like men projecting their wants, needs, and desires onto women. Like for Claudia, Louis says something to the effect of like, "Oh, she was my redemption." And we haven't even heard a full story about her yet. It's just like when they meet. And so to place so much on another person that you don't even know, and it's also a child, and think that there's meant to be like a redemption, it's too much to put on another person. And so when these men make Bella Baxter who she is, or try to mold her in any way, she like thwarts them in her own way, and she definitely plays a beat to her own drum. And but that's something that like she has to do to like, I feel like, survive them, in my opinion. And that really stood out to me. And I think that's why Claudia would have it. And I also think that it's those elements that also basically I'm answering the second question. Did this book recontextualize the character for me? Excuse me. And yeah, in some ways it did. Just the aspects of these stories, and they're like surrounding a character rather than them making them the main character in a way. Like Claudia is like a bystander of Louis and Lestat's like relationship. And I feel like Bella is like a bystander to like men playing God, basically. I mean, the person who created her is actually called Godwin, and she calls him God for short. So that's a little bit on the nose, but the point comes across. What book would I recommend Claudia? And so today I'm going to go ahead and recommend Bookish Broads, Women Who Wrote Themselves into History by Lauren Marino, illustrated by Alexandra Kilburn. And so it would just be nice if she saw examples of like women doing these, like making an impact on the world, I guess I could say. I wish I could pick someone we probably know well, but maybe not. Oh, there's Agatha Christie. Problematic figure, but she's written a lot of great books. Yeah, there's so many. There's Beatrix Potter, beloved children's author. But yeah, there's a lot of great ones. The Bronte sisters. All right, I'll leave it there. Additionally, now that we're wrapping this up, I do have Frankenstein. I have read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but also if you're interested in another book that uses Frankenstein as a framework to tell another story, much like Poor Things, I would highly suggest Frankenstein in Baghdad. This is like, I read these like back to back a while ago, and I'm glad I did. This is basically, it's not like an adaptation or reimagining. It's really like an author using the framework of Frankenstein to have like a conversation about how do I say this? War and how and revenge and how it's like this terrible violent cycle. And I really enjoyed that book. Let me see. I think that's all. I have one more book to read for my readathon. That should have been done like by the end of last month. But here we are. So let me know if you've read any other books or if you read this book for this particular prompt. I hope you're enjoying the readathon as I go along. The last character I'm tackling for the year is going to be Daniel. Get ready because I already have guests lined up, so I'm really excited about that. And so, yeah, thanks for being here with me. Just remember, life is chaos, so just be kind to yourself and be kind to others and read more books. Bye.